In 2020, Intel was the most valuable chip company on Earth. Its processors sat inside 80% of the world's computers. Its brand was worth more than Coca-Cola. Its market value peaked at nearly $300 billion. 4 years later, that same company laid off 15,000 people. Its market value had collapsed to under $100 billion. And the crown jewel of American technology, the company that invented the microprocessor itself, had fallen behind a competitor it used to destroy without thinking. This is not the story of a company that made one bad decision. This is the story of how the world's most important chipmaker let 3 separate revolutions pass it by and paid for every single one. To understand how far Intel has fallen, you have to understand what it used to be. Founded in 1968 by 2 of the most brilliant engineers in American history, Intel didn't just build chips, it invented the entire industry. In 1971, it created the first microprocessor, the 4004, a chip smaller than a fingernail that contained the power of an entire computer room. That single invention changed human civilization. Every smartphone, every laptop, every server on the planet runs on a descendant of that chip. And for 40 years, Intel did something no other company managed. It never lost its grip. Every new generation of chips was faster than the last. Every competitor that tried to challenge it, AMD, Cyrix, and IBM, got crushed. The Intel Inside campaign turned a silicon slab into one of the most trusted brands in the world. By the year 2000, Intel was worth $2 trillion, adjusted for inflation. It had a monopoly so complete that it controlled 90% of the PC processor market, and it had a secret weapon that seemed to make it unbeatable forever: the ability to design its own chips and manufacture them itself in its own factories. Nobody on Earth could do both at that scale, and that, more than anything, is what eventually destroyed it. Because while Intel was perfecting its desktop empire, the world was quietly moving somewhere else. In 2007, Steve Jobs walked on stage and introduced the iPhone. Inside that revolutionary device was a chip designed by a company Intel had once dismissed as irrelevant, ARM. Jobs had actually offered Intel the iPhone chip deal. Intel turned it down because its leadership believed smartphones would never need the kind of processing power that mattered. It was the most expensive mistake in the company's history. While Intel stayed focused on PCs, ARM chips took over the entire mobile world. Every smartphone on Earth, Apple, Samsung, and Google ran on ARM architecture. Intel's mobile chips, when it finally bothered to make them, were late, power-hungry, and embarrassingly bad. It poured billions into mobile, then quietly gave up. But here's the thing that makes this story painful. Intel could have survived missing mobile. The PC market was still huge. It had time. The problem was that missing mobile set a pattern of arrogance, a pattern of believing the old rules would always apply, and the next revolution would punish that arrogance far harder. For decades, Intel's greatest advantage was manufacturing. Its factories were the most advanced on Earth. But around 2014, something started to crack. Intel's next-generation chip, the 14 nanometer, hit massive delays. The 10 nanometer was even worse, years late, buggy, abandoned. Meanwhile, a company Intel barely considered a threat was quietly perfecting its own factories, a Taiwanese firm called TSMC. Every year Intel slipped, TSMC advanced. And while Intel's leadership insisted the company would catch up, it stopped being able to deliver on the promises. Each delay meant its chips were slower, less efficient, and more expensive than what its own customers could buy from someone else. Then the real earthquake came. In 2020, Apple, one of Intel's most loyal customers, announced it was abandoning Intel entirely. It designed its own chips using ARM architecture built by TSMC. The M1 chip wasn't just competitive, it was dramatically better than anything Intel was shipping, faster, cooler, with battery life that made Intel laptops look ancient. That was the moment the illusion shattered. Intel's biggest customer had just proven that you didn't need Intel's factories or its designs to build a world-class chip. And the company that had dominated computing for 4 decades suddenly had no moat left. Just as Intel was struggling to fix its manufacturing, the third revolution arrived, and it was the one that finally broke it. artificial intelligence. And the company that exploded with it was not Intel, it was Nvidia. While Intel spent years obsessed with traditional processors, Nvidia had quietly built the chips that AI models depend on, graphics processors that turned out to be perfect for training neural networks. When ChatGPT launched in 2022 and the AI boom began, demand for Nvidia's chips went vertical. Its stock passed $3 trillion, 30 times Intel's entire value. Intel tried to respond. It launched AI accelerator chips, bought companies, promised to compete, but it was years behind. Its AI hardware was late, its software ecosystem was weak, and its once unbeatable manufacturing was still years behind TSMC. By 2024, the picture was brutal. Nvidia was worth 30 times more than Intel. AMD, the company Intel used to humiliate, had stolen massive market share in both PCs and servers. And Intel's own chips were being made by the very competitor it used to dominate. The company that had invented the semiconductor industry was now its slowest learner. The numbers tell the story. In August 2024, Intel reported catastrophic results. Revenue collapsed. It announced it was cutting 15,000 jobs, the biggest layoff in its history. Its stock dropped by more than a quarter in a single day. Credit agencies downgraded it. For a moment, its market value fell below $100 billion, a company that had once been worth nearly 3 times that. Desperate, Intel turned to the one thing it had always done best, asking for help. The US government handed it billions in funding, betting that a crippled Intel was too strategically important to let fail. Intel's CEO announced a radical plan to become a contract manufacturer, building chips for other companies in Intel's own factories, competing directly against TSMC. It was a gamble, a desperate, expensive, necessary gamble. But even Intel's own leadership admitted that catching TSMC would take years the company might not have. And the cruelest part, the very factories that were supposed to be Intel's salvation were burning cash at a terrifying rate, with no guarantee they would ever turn a profit. So, where does that leave Intel? There is a version of the future where the gamble works, where American money, government support, and sheer engineering stubbornness pull Intel back from the edge, and it becomes the foundry the West needs to survive without depending on Taiwan. And there's a version where Intel goes the way of every empire that refused to change, too proud, too slow, and too late. The story isn't finished yet. But one thing is certain, the company that invented the chip that built the modern world is now fighting for its life. The question is whether it can learn before it runs out of time. If you made it this far, you now understand Intel's collapse better than most financial analysts do. That's what this channel is about. The hidden forces that decide which empires rise and which ones fall. Subscribe, because the next story is already being written.